Welcome to Mental Health in Focus, brought to you by Flow Vector Systems. We're passionate technologists dedicated to helping businesses get started and thrive with AI integrated solutions. Find flow state in your business. Now let's move on with the podcast.
Welcome, everyone. Today we have Wally Hollis at LifeBridge, and we're going to go through and talk about mental health in flow. And Wally's going to talk a bit about his practice and some of his thoughts on folks entering the mental health space, maybe looking for help and what's maybe the best way to get started. And then we'll go into a bit about just business process and technology and get some thoughts on some therapeutic perspectives. I know, Wally, you have a ton of experience in the space and work with some pretty interesting therapeutic practices. And we'd just love to hear more about you and your practice and your perspectives on mental health.
Sure, you bet. Frederick, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me on. I think one thing that I really like about this is that by focusing on mental health, we're acknowledging that in recent years, decades, it has gotten so much more attention, the value of it. You know, once upon a time, it was all just about making money or just having the happy family or whatever. But there are so many things on a daily basis that we deal with, whether it's stresses, whether it's anxieties, whether it's family, history. There's so much that if we don't take the time to look at it and find some healing, we're just going to propagate it generation after generation after generation. And one of the things that we face today is that, we're dealing with the technology here that, 10 years or so ago wasn't really there or wasn't that effective. And you take of all of social media. When social media started up, you're like, oh, this is great. We're going to get so connected. We're going to know people so well. But then the depression rates also went up like crazy. People more connected than ever and lonelier than ever. So technology, even there, we add in an extra element in terms of, the things that we have to deal with. And so in my practice, I get all the above. And, it's kind of interesting in my particular case, in talking to you, I'm just a two-man operation. My wife and I, she's a life coach. I'm a licensed therapist. We work together in what we do, but we're not like some giant agency. We're not like we're touching millions of people in what we do. But we want to do what we can in terms of everybody's an individual. And so as we deal with people, we don't want to look as like, you're just one little minion in the midst of a big population. No, you are a human being that wants help. And when you come for help, we're here to try to do it. Our little corner of the world here in Lexington, Kentucky, we'll do what we can. And so far, I think we've been doing pretty well. Been going about 20 years now. Moved here in 2017 from the Denver area. Okay. So we've gone from a pretty big city to one that's a lot smaller. But what's the commonality? People, individuals. Everybody has their issues that they want to work through and heal from. So that's a little bit of there. Do you want to get into just a tad more of my history?
Yeah, I do. I really want to hear about, sort of why you got into the mental health space.
Okay. It was kind of forced upon me. And by that, what I mean is I had been in radio for 25 years. That's all I'd ever wanted to do, be a sportscaster, be a DJ, produce programs. That's all I ever wanted to do. And I was doing that actually overseas in Australia. But the time with the organization we were with came to an end. And so we came back to the States, went to Denver. My brother-in-law had offered me a job there. It's kind of nice coming back to the U.S. to have a job lined up. And so I was 46 at the time, 69 now. And we got settled in, bought a house. At that point in time, I was working with him in career planning. Didn't really know much about that, but it's like, okay, we'll give it a try. 11 months into being back in the U.S., suddenly my wife died. She had gone in for a little procedure, and I do say little because it really wasn't any big thing. But what we didn't know is that when they operated on her, it triggered something called thrombophilia. And so in essence, she died in my arms. So that was very traumatic. She actually existed for a couple more days. And I say that purposely because she was pretty much gone, but then expired, if you want to use that word. And so it's like my world was completely shaken. I had two little girls, 13 and 8. Now all of a sudden I was a single dad. to raise little girls. Didn't know what to do. Continued working as best I could, but so often I was looking at a computer screen just blank because I was in the process of grieving. And then 6 months later, it happened to be my brother-in-law, who was my boss, that he had to let me go. Things just weren't working out as well financially as he had hoped. So now all of a sudden, I'm a single dad of 2 kids, unemployed. So what do I do? So
oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, that just gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
Beset by grief. The times when you're lying in bed and you're like, I really don't want to get up. God, just take me home right now. I don't want to live any longer. If it wasn't for the 2 girls, my daughters in the other room, man, I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah.
So what happens that in the building I was in, there happened to be a counselor. And my brother-in-law had her business card and said, why don't you go see her? And I did. Probably the best decision that I ever made, because she really started guiding me through the grieving process, what it meant to grieve. And that kind of flowed into life counseling and asking me a question like, what is a man? I had no answer. I had lost my identity in my wife being gone. So she really helped me into that. Well, in the midst of that counseling, that went on for about a year or so. But in the midst of that counseling, there were 4 occasions I had where people that I was spending time with, because I was out of work, that I was spending time with, and they would be, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but, and they'd go on and tell me. One of them was my pastor. And it's like, wow, if I got a pastor telling me that, what are they saying? So I went back to my counselor and I said, what would you think if I went back to school to become a counselor? And she said, I think it'd be great. Wally, there's not a lot of male counselors out there. There's really not a lot of very good male counselors out there. I think you'd do wonderfully.
Yeah.
That's all I needed. Went back to school, got my degree, and kind of, if you want, the rest is sort of history. After that, and here we are 20 years later. It was a couple of years after my wife died that I got remarried. In the midst of my counseling, met a woman who was in counseling herself, and we teamed forces to become a counseling team doing marriage counseling, premarital, sex therapy. We're both certified in that, and that was an absolute delight to be able to find another life partner, especially who shared that. So that's a little bit of the history of what took me into counseling.
Yeah, no, it's an awful story, and also inspiring, because you can see how far down you go to the bottom of feeling like, God, just take me away. I'm done. I can't handle this anymore. To climbing back, finding recovery, and going on to help. Hundreds or thousands of people. It's amazing. I love that.
There's a line that I use. It comes from an old song, but the line says, she's coming to life again, as part of the chorus. And that, for me, is really one of my philosophies. I want to help people come back to life again, whether they're going through grief, whether they're going through a divorce, whether they're going through losing a job, whether they're just going through, a crappy upbringing, that they've got a lot of baggage that they're carrying and they want to be freed of. So when you see that lightness come, because they're working it through, they're finding hope, they're persevering, there's nothing better than that. So
and it's funny, you mentioned all the things that I've been going through over the last year, right? It's divorce, loss of a job, childhood issues, some addiction issues with alcohol, all of this sort of culminated all at one time, and it's like, wow, and the heck am I going to go through this, right? This is way too much for me to handle, which ultimately, through my recovery journey, I was able to find God, and I was able to sort of release all of those things instead of holding on to all those things. I just like, here you go, God. Like,
absolutely,
you hang on to this. I can't do all this shit on my own, right? So
well,
you hang on to these.
There's no wonder why so many programs, whether it's AA or NA or SAA or any of those programs with their 12 steps, they refer to it more as the higher power, but why they do that, recognizing there's something bigger than me. And
Yes.
And I think when we how do I want to say, when we submit to that and recognize we're not lesser than as a human being for recognizing that there's something bigger than us.
Yeah.
I mean, in my case, I see that as God. You know, but higher powers come in a lot of different forms for different people. But
Absolutely.
recognizing that there's something bigger, that is a big step on the road to recovery in any of those things. There's a book I recently read, and the name of it was "You're Not Enough," and that's okay.
Yep.
And I think that's really part of it. When we can go, because so many people will say, "I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I've never felt enough," and to sort of accept it and to say, "Well, you're not," but that's okay.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think if there was one key for me in my recovery, it was finding that switch and that submission and saying, you know, I'm not enough. I can't do all this stuff on my own. I'm a DIY Home Depot kind of guy, right? Like I love to do everything on my own. But be able to just submit and say, okay, I can't do it, you know, and just categorically put all my problems up and just say, okay, like I'm not going to worry about this. I'm just going to walk through life and focus on my recovery. And like, if something drops out of one of those buckets that I put up there and I got to deal with it, I'll sign that paper or do that thing. And then I'll put it back up there and I'll just keep moving.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
sometimes, to use that word submit, sometimes we just got to give up in order to move forward.
Yeah.
There could be great freedom in that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and, you know, when I talk about this kind of stuff, particularly with folks that have been in the military, they have a big problem with submission and surrender and they like these kind of words, right?
Sure.
I'm not sure how to work around that, but you know, it's, you know, when you say you surrender, you're not surrendering, you know, that you give up. What you're doing is you're saying, I'm ready, right? Like I surrender that I can't do 100% of this on my own and I need a team to help me, right? And that team is, you know, could be clinicians, it could be psychotherapists, it could be, you know, any sort of thing. It could be a pastor, it could be, you know, a group of people in AA or just some men's group or your fishing buddies or whatever, right? It's just submitting or surrendering that, okay, I need help.
Right. And part of what you just described there is you're finding your community as well. Healing does not do well in solitude. Isolation is one of the absolute worst things. That's why the whole mental health thing really exploded during COVID. During the lockdown, everybody was isolated. That was not healthy.
No,
I fought against what everybody was trying to tell us and do. It's like, you people do not understand what this isolation is doing to people. Anyway, I could go a long time on that subject and I won't. Isolation is not healthy. We do need community. For a strong introvert like myself, that is like, okay, I'd rather just sit in front of the computer and deal with it. But even I know that I need that community. And so we find it, whether it's in a small group, whether it's in a dinner club, whether it's in a whatever it may be. That is so critical and so vital. And these are things that are very pertinent to the counseling process, because the number of people that I deal with that have said, I'm just so alone, I just feel so lonely. Let's see where we can get you involved. Let's see where we can get you feeling better about yourself being involved. You know, things of that nature. So
and you talk about loneliness, like after my legal separation and like kind of moving out into my own place, you know, I had dogs and a kid and, you know, and a wife and, you know, projects all around the house to deal with. And then it's just me sitting there by myself. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, I don't know what to do. Right. And that loneliness was hard to deal with at first.
Sure.
It definitely took a therapist and some active engagement with other folks to go out and reach out and just make things happen, right? Not wait for things to happen, because it's not going to happen.
We'd like to think that it will all come to us, but no, we need to initiate. We need to be proactive. And again, as alone, as an introvert, sometimes that's really hard for me to want to initiate and move forward that way. But when you know the equation, when you know the answer, you want to find it within yourself that says, but I can do this. I know I can do this. And as I said, as we, through counseling, help people have hope, they find strength, they find encouragement, they find purpose, they find direction. And that's, as you full well know yourself, that's all part of that recovery process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So just real quick, kind of maybe give you your thoughts on someone who's struggling mentally, maybe they're going through one of these situations that we've already talked about, or maybe they just have some childhood trauma that's just nagging, sure, and it's dragging them through life. What's the best way for someone like that to reach out and get started? A big challenge for me was I thought I needed a psychiatrist, right? I didn't know, so I called a psychiatrist, and it was like 6 months. Yeah, good luck. We'll see you in 6 months.
Right.
And I'm like, but I'm like, I just finally submitted that I need help, and like I need help now. And
right. I have somebody.
Yeah, great. Okay. I'll drink for another 6 months. Fine.
Yeah, there's a good answer, right?
Yeah. And then it took a lot of time and some additional challenges in my life before I found a therapist and was able to finally work my way through the system. So yeah, your thoughts on someone who's struggling, like what's the reach out and get help, like, right, I need help now. What do they do?
Well, you're gonna get a slightly biased answer, and things have shifted to where today a psychiatrist, and I hope nothing I said disses on them, but a psychiatrist is by and large a prescriber. Yeah. Managed healthcare, bring them in, quick evaluation, here's a script, next.
Yeah.
That's not what a counselor does. So I encourage people to go to a counselor. I have known so many wonderful counselors that I have no problem referring people to if they've got a different type of situation that I'm not, what we call, you never want to practice beyond your area of expertise. So if it's something that I'm not adept at as well, people that I can refer to, but it's always to counselors. Every once in a while, it might be to a life coach. I mentioned my wife is a life coach. I've got associates that are life coaches, and I've done plenty of life coaching and career coaching as well. So it's part of, for the individual, if they're looking for counseling or looking for help, is even their own assessment. What am I looking for?
Right.
And one thing I don't think we talk about enough is for the person to ask themselves, am I ready? You talked about that. Here I am. I'm ready to surrender. I'm ready to submit. If the person isn't, they're probably not going to get a lot of help out of what goes on.
Yeah.
People still come into counseling with biases. Oh, going to the shrink. What are they going to do? They're just there to make money. They don't really care. Hey, those biases are there, and there are a lot of people who really just don't want to go to counseling for that reason anymore. I'm weak. I'm incapacitated. I can't believe that I would do this. I don't want to lower myself. I've encountered all those, and I will honestly just tell people, if you're not ready, don't go. It's a waste of time and money.
Yeah.
When you are ready, and I do say when, not if, but when you are ready, then what I suggest is people, they can go to Psychology Today website. You can do a search on your geographical area. Of course, today with so much being done online, you can find somebody just about anywhere. Yeah. Different states have different requirements in terms of can they practice outside of their own state or not. So they certainly, from the therapist point of view, they want to know that. But for the person who's looking for a counselor, good resource there. But it also places, you talked about with God, with the church. Most churches, even if a person isn't particularly religious, most churches have a good referral list of people that are trustworthy. Yeah. They'll refer people out to. We get that a lot. Sometimes there might be churches go, I have never even heard of this church, but somehow they got our name, and so they referred us to that, to the person who came to them. Doctors. One of the things we did, I mentioned that we're sex therapists, so we would go to doctors and gynecologists and urologists and things like that, let them know that we were available, so that as a person, if they're having something like, say, in a sex therapy aspect, they could go to their doctor. Hey, who's a good counselor that I can go to and talk to? That's the way to get a lead. I suppose the internet version of the Yellow Pages, you can also do. But there's a lot of sources, and even if you get somebody, if somebody was to look in and make contact with somebody, they're like, I don't think this person is going to be a good fit. they're probably going to have other people they refer to. I've got a big referral list just for that reason.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fit every need, but I don't want a person to get discouraged and say, "Oh my goodness, that first person I tried, they just don't match, so I'll give it up."
Right. Yeah.
A lot of good counselors out there. Keep persevering.
That's right. Yeah, and that's something I also recommend is you're not marrying the first counselor you encounter, right? Like,
Right.
It's okay to go and say, you know what, there's something about this person I don't necessarily connect with. I'm gonna try someone else, right? And just keep trying until you find someone that you can connect with and understands you and understands your problems and
Right.
And you feel like you can trust. I think that's the biggest thing, right?
If I can emphasize that point, the dynamic between a client and a counselor, paramount.
Yeah.
If there's not that dynamic at play, I once again, I hate to say it because it sounds so mercenary. It's a waste of time and money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as I've told many clients, I'm more than happy to take your money.
Yeah.
But I'm not sensing you're really ready for the help, the advice, the maybe homework or techniques that I'm looking at for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that dynamic between the client and counselor, paramount.
Yeah, and I think this is a good point, and I haven't talked about this yet on the podcast, but maybe let's hit on it for a minute. Okay. So, in my relationship with my former wife, she had suggested multiple times that I see a counselor, or that we see a counselor, and so we had gone to couples therapy a couple of times, and it was kind of like dragging me in there, right? Obviously, I wasn't ready for that. I had my biases, I had my opinions. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus, and
sure.
That whole stuff, right? And so I never got a lot out of it. I wasn't ready for it, and so if your wife is dragging you to counseling, or your husband's dragging you to counseling, do you have any thoughts or insights or advice for those folks when someone else is sort of recommending or pushing them into a counseling situation?
I hesitate to say it, but my first thing is to say, don't drag them, because they're probably not going to get anything out of it. Now, you may be one of those fortunate ones where the person who doesn't want to go in and they come in and they're doing this, and they're not into it at all.
Yeah.
You might get lucky and end up saying something that's going to connect with them, but you're really not looking at it. I think what's really important in that particular instance is the person who does want to be invested in it. Is you go. You don't have to drag your spouse to it, because odds are they're either that or they'll say, okay, I'll go. And then they go once or twice. It's like, okay, I checked the list. Let's get divorced.
Exactly.
They're actually not wanting to be there, and they're just giving that acquiescence to say, hey, I did it. They can't say I didn't. I suggest that the person who has the vested interest go to counseling, because one person in a marriage can make a difference, especially if they're vulnerable and open, and they're recognizing maybe some of the dynamics in the marriage are because of something they're bringing in. Mommy issues, daddy issues, counter those on a weekly basis. And so when they start getting those resolved, they can go, wow, maybe that's why my spouse and I struggle. And they'll get the buy-in, and they can make a difference, because odds are their spouse is going to see somewhat of a difference, especially when we were talking about what gets in the way: ego, pride, lack of humility, narcissism. All those get in the way. If a person humbles themselves and says, you know what, I'll do what I need to do to make this work. And I recognize I've got stuff I want to heal, stuff I want to get resolved. And if they work on it, it can make a difference. That's my main advice, is usually to say the person who is invested, who does want something to happen, you go and work on you. Don't go and bitch and moan about your spouse. That's not going to do any good. Go and figure out what you need to work on. And it can make a huge difference. Will it always save things? No. But it'll give you a fighting chance, because you'll know yourself better.
That's awesome. Great advice. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's talk about, is there any sort of other therapies or topics you wanted to kind of go left or right on here before we kind of get into your business and technology stuff?
Sure. One of the therapies that I do and that I encourage anybody to go to, especially if they're struggling with any type of trauma, whether it's big T or little t trauma, is EMDR. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I have found it just a fascinating and such a helpful therapy. It typically really reduces the time rather than just traditional talk therapy. Now, I'm not going to get down on traditional talk therapy. It's what I do. It's great. But EMDR tends to really move through more quickly the traumas that people have. If I can give you just one quick little story in that regard. Yeah. One guy came to see me, this is when I was back in Denver, and I mean, he was just physically shaking because he was so angry and tense and fearful. As we got into the story of what was going on, he was getting that way because his son was turning the age that he was when he had been physically and emotionally abused by a stepfather, right? And so it was more the fear. He was fearful he was going to act out toward his son, and he didn't want to. So we immediately started in with the EMDR, and 3 or 4 sessions, not a ton, is that he even said, I think I got to stop. I'm losing my edge, because he needed kind of that energy and drive on the work that he did. But he came in with like 4 or 5, single line pages of traumas, of things that bothered him, things that were on his mind. We probably looked at 2 or 3, and they all went away.
Wow.
Part of the reason that, if I can describe it this way, it's kind of hard on the video. Here's the issue we're dealing with. Yep. These fingers are kind of the things where they manifest themselves. So if you heal this one and you heal this one, oftentimes the rest will go with it, because now you're getting to the core of what really needs healing. And a good EMDR therapist will help take you back to that kind of core to resolve. And when that gets resolved, most of the rest of these things that have bothered a person, they tend to fade away or get resolved themselves. It can be a little bit weird. I had one client that we did 4 or 5 sessions. They were like just really bad trips, or almost nightmarish, but definitely dreamlike. And what she was reporting, we got done with the therapy, and I honestly, I'll admit, as a therapist, in the middle of it, I'm going, what is going on here? I'm like, I have no clue what's happening. How do I guide this person? She got done with those sessions, and she goes, this is great, man. This helps so much. I feel so much better now. I feel like I have perspective on my life. And I'm like, what happened? But that's actually, they talk kind of about the magic of EMDR. At least when I was trained, they talked about that. It has to do with the brain. I could go all into the scientific part of it, but there's stuff that goes on up here that just referred to. It's kind of the magic. Yeah, but it works. So
there's a rewiring thing that's almost like a physical rewiring, right?
Right.
And yeah, I can imagine that some random things might happen when that's occurring.
Just a little bit of the science part of it, if you will. In our brains, we have what we call neural pathways. And if we reinforce those neural pathways with negative or faulty behaviors that are not beneficial, we will widen that pathway. And then it just becomes a habit we don't even think about. Like, say, an addictive behavior, right? We'll go to it just because that's what we do. So we want to identify those neural pathways. How did we get there? And then take the steps to reduce. And EMDR can be great at reducing these quickly. Is we want to reduce those neural pathways. And then the reprocessing part of EMDR is we'll build in a positive, what we call a positive cognition about it. The negative cognition might be like, I'm at fault for whatever the trauma was. The positive cognition might be, I'm not at fault, or I'm healthy, or I'm in control. I mean, there's innumerable cognitions that we can use in that. But when the person reinforces that same idea, that same trauma can come to mind. But instead of going, I'm worthless, I caused a problem, I'm whatever, they can go with, hey, I'm in control, I'm good, I'm a trustworthy, lovable person. And that, again, as I said earlier, seeing a person come back to life after maybe even a lifelong dealing with some particular trauma, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So another one I'll touch on that I don't do, but it's called ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. I've got some colleagues who utilize that. That seems to be really effective as well. And I can't speak to it in depth. I've studied it a little bit, but it's getting us to a place where we kind of accept where we're at. It's a little bit of that surrender idea.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to accept that this is where I'm at. I'm going to be committed to seeing myself as okay, even if that it continues, because I'm going to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
One illustration: panic attacks. Right? How do you fight against panic attacks? I get that a lot. Right? One of the most valuable tools is accept that they're happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems counterintuitive, but when we stop fighting against it and go, okay, this is happening, well, it gives us a chance to look at, what mindset is at play that is bringing on so much of this panic. But just accepting the fact that it's there we don't have to get paranoid about if one pops up for us. It's like, there it is. In fact, one guy said, I really didn't mind the panic attacks anymore because it gave me a chance to practice my techniques about how to get through it.
Right.
There's a great illustration of accepting it.
Right. And that's reframing as well, right? I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. That's one of the biggest things I've learned through my journey is the pause, right? And just saying, hey, I'm having an emotion, I'm having a feeling, like, pause for a minute. What is it? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm feeling whatever in my body. I'm feeling whatever in my head. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is this going to last forever? No.
Right.
Okay. Well, then can I just wait it out? Probably. Or can I reframe the situation? Yeah, I could probably do that too. Right. And I can just, it's now become the habit that I can, when I feel something, I pause and I respond versus I react. Right.
Right.
So that pause and respond thing is powerful.
Very powerful. And you said another thing that is so powerful as well is that it's not going to last forever. And I will tell people that. I said, have you ever had a panic attack that has been ongoing for the last 20 years? Day after day and something like that. And I've never had a person say, are we good still?
Yeah. My headphones just failed for some reason. So
okay. I saw that quizzical look on your face. I just wanted to make sure we were still connected. So anyway, so if you take somebody and I say, okay, you've got this panic attack, you're kind of here, it's bothersome. You've been there before? Yeah. Did it last forever? No. Neither is this one. So now when you're in the middle of that panic attack, it doesn't feel good. I acknowledge it. I've had panic attacks. I know some of it feels like.
Yeah.
It's not going to last forever. Let's ride it out. Let's accept that it's going on. Take those deep breaths. And then we go into the other techniques of how to work through it in a successful manner. And that, really seems to work to get people to just go through it easily. So.
Yeah, I know I've experienced panic attacks a couple of times, and you feel like nothing, like you're gonna die, right? Like, awful. And someone giving you advice in the moment's not going to help at all, right? You got to know this stuff in advance of having one, recognize what's happening, what's going on, and then breathe through it, get through it, move on, right?
Yeah. I don't ever want to give a flippant answer or something that just seems trite. Here, this will work and you're going to be fine. No, it's just like you said, Frederick, that you learn the techniques, you learn what's going on, you learn more about your body and your mind.
Yeah.
So the next time, or maybe the next time after that it does come along, you're in a better place to go, okay, I've learned about this. Here's what I can do with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, panic attacks are a tough one. I do not want to try to trivialize or minimize. They are tough.
Yeah. That's an extreme example. Yeah.
Right. But you can survive them. You can make, sometimes you absolutely feel like you're dying. Yeah. Am I going to be this way forever? And I don't want to trivialize it because there's a lot of people who really struggle with it, but it isn't something that truly you don't have to go through forever.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here for.
That's awesome.